Hi. So recently, the Reserve Bank of India released a draft circular on provisioning norms for project finance. This obviously was covered by numerous newspapers. But the fundamental aspect or the critical aspect of these provisioning norms was also covered by these newspapers, which talked about how private sector, especially in the project finance domain, vehemently opposed these provisioning norms. Now, what exactly were these provisioning norms? Why private sectors were against these provisioning norms? Or what exactly is the concept of provisioning is what we will discuss today in this 5-minute series. So my name is Mayank Barua. I welcome all of you to this 5-minute series. Let's discuss this. So before going deep into the circular, let's understand the concept of provisioning. So the provisioning is the practice of setting aside funds from a bank's profit to cover potential losses on loans and investments that a bank does. So think about if a bank give 100 crores worth of loans to a particular sector, for example, real estate sector. So if RBI gives a direction, let's say that for every loan that you give to a real estate sector, you have to keep a 5% provisioning. So for 100 crore loans, a bank has to keep 5 crores from its profit within itself. Now the practice, you might say, is beneficial because it protects bank or it acts as a buffer if that 100 crore loan gets defaulted. But it also keeps that 5 crore rupees unutilized for further growth of loans and investments for that banking company. So naturally, there are pros and cons for such kind of practice. Now let's see what the circular says and what exactly is the project finance. We'll discuss it. So just like how for every sector, the Reserve Bank of India provides provisioning norms for the regulated entities, similarly, they've done so for the project finance sector as well. And if you look at the circular very carefully, they talked about 3 sectors particularly for the project finance. So the projects involved in infrastructure sector, non-infrastructure sector, as well as commercial real estate sector were the key sectors about which the draft circular talked about which sectors the projects the draft circular talked about. So now naturally the concept is that for any project, especially in those 3 sectors that need money from the banks, the bank, while providing loan, will have to keep some amount of funds as per the provisioning norms which Reserve Bank of India talked about that in that draft circular. Now what exactly is the percentage that we're talking about in the draft circular which Reserve Bank of India talked about? So let's see that. So the main thing in this provisioning norms, Reserve Bank of India clearly said that during construction phase, if you're providing loan to any project in all those 3 sectors, infrastructure, non-infrastructure, as well as commercial real estate, there should be 5% provisioning. That means if you're giving a 100 crore loan, then 5 crore you should keep aside as a buffer. And this is during the construction phase. Now naturally, in the operational phase, when the construction has been completed and the project is running, then the Reserve Bank of India naturally thinks that while it is running, it will generate cash flow. So you can reduce the provisioning from 5% to 2.5%. So if the project is in operational phase and if you're giving a loan of 100 crores to it, so 2.5 crore amount you should keep aside. So that was the provisioning norm. But why do you think private sector vehemently opposed this? What were their apprehensions with these provisioning norms? And you will understand this if you will understand what exactly is the current provisioning norms related to this project financing sector. The current provisioning norms is less than 1% as of now. So for banks who constantly provide loans to such kind of sectors, from provisioning of 0.5, 0.35 or something like that, to shift towards 5% is a huge drastic step. They'll have to put aside a huge amount of funds, will naturally eat out their profits as well. So what did the private sector suggested? So the private sector suggested that instead of 5%, please go for 1% in all those 3 sectors if you're focusing on public sector projects. And why private sector suggested it? Because all those public sector projects is guaranteed by the government of India or government of state. So naturally the risk is very low over here. And if you want to even increase stability of banks by providing buffers via provisioning norms, you can increase it to 2% for other projects in all those 3 sectors that are non-government. So that's the suggestion. And why do you think private sector is giving this suggestion? What are the impacts that they are thinking that 5% provisioning can do? higher provisioning naturally eats out the profits of banks. Because think about it, it's a very simple measure. Bank which used to keep around, let's say, 1 CR while providing loans of 100 CR now have to keep 5 CR for the same amount of loan. So 4 crore amount of loan will be kept as unutilized. So if they have to keep more amount of funds unutilized, especially in the project financing sector, so the banks will naturally think that why should we go for such sector where the provisioning norms are high? They'll go to some different sector where the provisioning norms are not that much high. So this, you can naturally say, will impact the amount of liquidity in the project financing sector. The loans will become much more costly, and with less amount of fund available for the banks to lend, they will be a little bit much strict while providing loans. They'll see for good balance sheet, they'll see some good track record of companies that are asking for loan. So such activities will naturally reduce the amount of funds to be lent in the project financing sector. The loans will become much more costly, and the projects will naturally become much more unviable. So all those things, if they would have applied for new projects going forward, that would have still been okay. But the main thing because of which private sector is very protesting in a huge manner is this provision. That the same provisioning will apply to not only new but existing loans as well. So that means for whatever loans that you have already provided, the banks will ask for higher interest rates, and it will also become unviable for banks to lend more money, because for existing exposure, if they have to keep this provisioning, so think about the amount that will be left with bank, because most of the amount will go for provisioning. So that's why even the banking institutions as well as the private institutions both are vehemently opposing this circular, and they are asking Reserve Bank of India to change it. So this was all about the issue, but the most important thing is what you guys think about it. What do you think should happen? Will the provisioning norm should be 5% or should it go to 2% as suggested by the private sector? Is the financial stability of the institutions much more important, or is the liquidity in the project financing sector, which will obviously give growth to Indian economy, is it that much important? Or should we go for, as the Aristotle also talks about, the golden mean principle, or even the Gautam Buddha also talks about as the Madhyam Marg? That means balancing out both the needs. So tell me what you think in the comment box, and we'll meet in the next session with a new concept and with the new news. Thank you for joining. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.